This is Ms. Hurtado, and I am recording my discussion board for the questions for Module 3. So for Part 1, in what ways could you vary your instruction to ensure you're reaching all of the various learning styles you may have in your classroom? So as I was going through the module, one of the videos she talked about backwards planning, and I really liked the idea of that, of going with what you need your students to learn and kind of building off of that. I think by doing that, you know what it is that you want to teach or that you have to teach, and then you can use differentiated instruction, which is something that we talked about in our diversity class. And Dr. Jones showed us a video on differentiated instruction and gave us some books that we could read on it and things like that if we wanted. But I think that by kind of going off that, knowing what it is that you need to teach, and then planning everything off that, you can offer your students more of a variety of ways to learn the material. In one of the videos, the teacher was talking about how for your lesson plan, you have your academic standard, your learning objective, your lesson, and then your assessment activity. And as I was watching that, one of the things I was thinking about is I don't really have any control over the academic standard or the learning objective. Those things are kind of set in stone and they're mandated by the state for the most part. But some of the things I did have control over were how I did my lesson and what types of assessment activities I could use. And as a science teacher, I really like the idea of having a lot of labs. I think for myself personally, labs were the way that I really was able to understand the information, because you kind of get to see it unfold. I like the idea as far as labs is you get the lab, you get to go home, you get to read it, ask questions on it if you need to, then come in and do the lab. And then I like the idea of having some sort of reflection on the lab. So whether that's maybe you could do this in various ways. You could have the students write a lab report. I think that's a good skill to have them do, and you could change it up each lab. So you could have the students write a lab report. You could have the students get in a group and discuss the lab and, answer questions on it. There's a lot of different things you could do. So I also think another way that you could be adaptable to the various learning styles is doing things like Socratic seminars. That gives students a chance who maybe don't really like to do labs or sit down and write, but they get the chance to express themselves verbally as well. So you could pull for myself, when I think about the things that I would like to do for a Socratic seminar, is maybe pull current events that are happening in the science community, small articles, news articles, or small journals for the students to read, and then, conduct a Socratic seminar in that way. The other thing I was thinking about doing is, I know there's some people have like a negative view on this, but I do think that in a science class, it's important to know where your students stand, because your whole class isn't going to be at the same learning level. No one's class is going to be. And I think that in science, it's really important to know where your students stand, what the previous knowledge they have. If you give an initial assessment to students, and half of them don't know the difference between climate and weather, it's going to be difficult to teach your students a learning objective or an academic standard, about climate, maybe about climate change or different weather patterns if they don't know the difference. So I think it's important to kind of know where your students stand. And the initial assessment, that doesn't have to be something that's graded. That can just be for your personal use as a teacher, and maybe take some of the pressure off that by having it not graded, or you can make it extra credit. So for Part 2, what is your main takeaway about learning objectives and lesson planning that you learned from this module in our course, and what advantages or disadvantages does the concept of thinking styles have compared to learning styles? So again, one of the main takeaways was the emphasis on how important the academic standard is. So you go off of that and you have the opportunity to teach that standard in several different ways. So while you don't get to change the standard, you do have a choice in how you teach it and deliver that material to your students. As far as the thinking styles goes, at first I honestly thought the thinking style and the learning style were the same. So until I read chapter 10, I didn't really understand the difference between the two. And one of the things, a disadvantage I thought between thinking styles and learning styles, or the only disadvantage I could think of, was that as far as the thinking style goes, as a student, you kind of at some point, once you get the information, to learn how to think, you have to be motivated yourself to do it. So I think that's kind of the only disadvantage, but there were a lot of advantages. I thought that being able to show students how to think critically and analyze data, and you're giving that student the skill to take with them, regardless of their learning style. So it doesn't matter what your learning style is, if you're a visual learner, an audio, or if you're a combination, being able to think critically and being able to problem solve is going to help you regardless of what your learning style is.